flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Mr. Blasberg?
Here.
Mrs. Hildebrand? Here. Mrs. Hoskins? Here. Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Mather?
Here.
Mrs. Schott? Here. And Student Representative Joe Bento?
Here.
And Student Representative Ann Etchells.
Thank you. And if you could call the calendar.
On Tuesday, November 19th, 2019, there is a school committee business meeting.
Thank you. So first on our agenda, we have the Computer Science Rhode Island presentation. Dr. Mansiri.
I need to be at this microphone, correct? I can't just do my
Yeah,
thing.
unfortunately, because otherwise the camera doesn't pick it up.
Okay. So good evening, everybody. My name is Denise Mansiri, Assistant Superintendent, and I am happy to have a bunch of people with me and I really want to highlight their work. We have had a committee, a computer science for North Kingstown committee that's been running pretty much the entire last year, and we're at a place where we put a plan up to Rhode Island Department of Ed, and I just want to take a moment to introduce who's here with me. I have Kim Ramos. She has been the district instructional technology coach for quite a few years now. How many years has that?
This is my 6th year.
Okay, she's the 6th year, and we really are working quite like side by side on this, so I'm very thankful for her to be here. We have Jess Rodriguez, who is a media specialist at Fishing Cove and also at Forest Park, and she jumped in the work right in the right at the very beginning, and she's been doing some computer science stuff in her media literacy classes at the elementary schools already, and she came to us with some of this knowledge, so we really, North Kingstown, lucked out getting Jess here. And then next to her, we have Rick Powell, who many of you know because he was really a key person to get the original North Kingstown CTE program for the pre-engineering when we were working with Dr. Auger on our original programs to come to the high school. So Rick now is not only working still on that CTE and the pre-engineering and robotics, but he also now is vertically working in our district as a district STEM coordinator, and he's going to be working over the next few months with the middle schools and the elementary schools to make sure that we are working to make sure everybody has equity and access to all the things we're going to be doing with computer science. And then finally, we have Brian Lally right here, and most of you know him. He is the principal over at Wickford Middle School, and he's really representing the middle schools here tonight because as we go through this, you'll see that we are going to be unrolling computer science in our district. So I'm going to start off. I can just hit this, right, John?
Use the keyboard there.
Oh, even better. Okay. All right, so this slide right here that you see, it starts off with computer science for all. That's nationwide. And so I say probably about 2016, Governor Gina Raimondo, she had a press conference. It was back in March 2016. The Rhode Island Representative Cicilline and Langevin were there. The mayor of Pawtucket was there. I happened to be there because I was at North Kingstown High School at the time, and they were rolling out the computer science for for Rhode Island. And with that, she had a very aggressive agenda, and she was hoping that within a year and a half, all schools in Rhode Island would have some kind of computer science in every school. And she had multiple reasons why she wanted CS4 Rhode Island. And with that, I had to look a little bit over here. So she talked about the number of jobs in computer science that were available, but that we didn't have a lot of graduates from Rhode Island to fill those jobs. AP computer science was offered at the time in only 9 public schools and no Title I schools. 1% of Rhode Island high school students were enrolled in computer science courses at the time, and in 2015, only 42 students in Rhode Island took the AP computer science exam, and only 26 earned a passing score of 3 or higher. So, and 3/4 of those who did pass were white males. So, I'm just going to hand this over to Kim Ramos because with that, we decided to do a few things in North Kingstown. Okay.
So along with these CS4RI goals and strategies, one of them was to build capacity to provide high-quality computer science education to all K-12 students in Rhode Island, broaden the participation among underrepresented populations, strengthen the workforce development, which is kind of one of the keys that Governor Raimondo has focused on, align with other state and national education and workforce efforts, make data-driven decisions, and obtain adequate funding, because we know that with this, we need to provide the PD, and so CS4RI was able to provide that for us. So what will it do? It will focus on skills, teach students the skills that matter, starting as early as in kindergarten. Jobs, help students obtain jobs in sectors that pay high wages and provide high quality of life by giving them the 21st century skills. And provide economic opportunities, attract leading-edge businesses who will then hire our students. So North Kingstown was one of 15 Rhode Island districts to join the CS4RI initiative. So back in January, we had a smaller team with just 5 of us representing all levels. And that was called the Script team. And there was funding from RIDE and through CS4RI to do some visioning work and getting together with these other districts to see kind of where we were starting from. Different districts were in different places. And so on the left-hand side is the original team, the 5 of us, Dr. Manseri, myself, Rick Powell, Eileen Murray from Davisville Middle School, and Jess Rodriguez were the original team. We did all that training at Rick. And then we expanded the team once we realized, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is where we're going. So we expanded to include Mike Waterman, the Director of Technology, Brian Lally, right here, Barbara Marr, who is the DMS Principal, and then Colleen Laughlin, who is the Fishing Cove Principal. So one of our first things was visioning. So throughout our script training, we were able to put together a vision, and then we went back with a larger team and took our 5-year technology strategic plan vision and married them together. So this is what you came up with. And I won't read it for you, but it's there, and it combines the 2 things. One of the other things that we did is we took our tech lead teacher job description and included computer science standards into that. So we just tweaked it a little bit. And then I'll turn this over to Rick.
Hello, how you doing? So as part of my new position this year, one of the things I will be working with all the schools and in the entire district is looking at how can we implement computer science standards in all of the education, starting in elementary and middle, making sure that all students across the district have that parallel exposure, but also looking at that vertical alignment as we go from elementary to middle to high school. As you can see, we have already started this program at the high school. We are in our 2nd year as an official Rhode Island career and technical education for computer science. We have 4 courses: Computer Science Principles, Computer Science Essentials, Computer Science A, and Cybersecurity. Computer Science Principles and Computer Science A are both taught at the AP level. Currently, we have about 25 students enrolled in the program, and we are in our 3rd year of offering AP Computer Science Principles, and as Dr. Manseri said, the number of students that took that course across the state previously was very low. Over the 2 previous years, we had about 70 students at North Kingstown High School who took that course, and about 67 of them were proficient on the exam, with NK High School's mean score being well above the state and global average. Brian Lowey's going to be coming up about the middle school.
Thanks, Rick. So at the middle school level, we kind of started this work a little last year, towards the end of last year, and certainly we're going to continue it this year. But the first thing that we did was kind of a curriculum crosswalk, just to kind of look at what we were already doing in the classroom and seeing how we can align that to the computer science standards. So one thing that I did, I worked with teachers from both DMS and WMS, and we decided that the place where it makes most sense for the computer science standards, at least to start, is in our specials or elective classes. So I worked with teachers at both schools, the library media specialists, the computer technology teachers, the shop and applied learning teachers, and the robotics teachers. So those are kind of the 4 classes where we think computer science lends itself, and luckily we kind of found out that we're doing a lot of it already. We're kind of hitting a lot of these standards. The information that you see up here under each grade level, those are the core concepts and some of the sub-concepts from the computer science standards, which this is the packet. I think it's like 72 pages. You can find it online, some nice light reading for you. But I gave, all I did last year, at the end of last year, was those teachers from both schools, I gave them the core concepts and kind of a description underneath that. And I just said, look at what you're already doing in your classes and tell me what areas we're kind of already hitting and covering. And luckily, nearly all of the core concepts, there's 6 of them, we're kind of already hitting them in each grade level. The way the schedule works, because not every 6th grade student will have either a STEAM or a library class, or not every 7th grader will be in robotics, we're kind of creating a working document that lists out in each grade level the exact computer science standards that they'll be able to hit and in what classes. So part of the work that I'm doing this year, we kind of started with those core concepts. We're going to be digging a lot deeper, and I'm going to be working with some of those teachers this Friday at our PD day to kind of tell them where we're going with this year. But sort of my vision at the end of the year, what I'd like to have is sort of a working document that kind of lists out in each grade level at each school what the concepts are that we're working on in computer science and how they're being hit by the students. So as an example, at Wickford in grade 7, for my library research skills class, that's taught by the librarian and media specialist, she's done for the last couple of years, and she'll continue it this year. She does a unit, it's about 2 or 3 weeks long. It's on digital citizenship, and that's done through commonsensemedia.org. So one of the things that the students kind of talk about in that is copyright laws and fair use when it comes to digital images or digital work that's created, if you're either recreating that or kind of using it in a presentation or something like that. So if you look at the standards that touches upon, I don't have the exact standard off the top of my head, CA-SLE-1 or something like that. But that standard is actually talking about responsible commuting in society. So the overarching goal by the end of the year is to sort of have an outline of each grade level, what the class is, what the units or projects that they're doing, and then what computer science standard that kind of hits. That's going to help us twofold. One, it'll sort of help us to see where the gaps are and what standards we're maybe not covering and how we can eventually get to those standards. And the second thing is just in terms of scheduling. As students progress through grades 6, 7, and 8, guidance counselors and principals and assistant principals, as we're building the schedule each year, we can make sure that students are being placed into classes that are going to hit all these standards by the time that they get out of both middle schools. So that's sort of the overarching vision. I'm working with 4 teachers from DMS and 3 from my school. Kind of started last year, but it'll certainly continue throughout this year as well. And I think Jess is next for elementary.
Yes. Okay. So as part of our vision and part of RIDE's goal for us was to have a strong coding program starting at the elementary level. So we looked at what was offered. We had a few different options, and we decided as a group to start with code.org at both the regular emerging readers and for our regular 3rd grade and up. But we're starting with 3rd grade this year with the rollout of the course for code.org for grade 3. The hope is that as a department, as the librarians, we will all be starting that course and working our way through it this year. And then next year, we'll take on 2 more courses. So we'll work with 2nd grade and 4th grade, and then we'll add each year until every elementary grade level is on code.org. Along with code.org, we are currently being trained in the Scratch program through MIT, which is a little bit, it's similar to code.org, but it's a little bit different so that the kids will get a choice and they'll get to learn a few different coding programs to see which ones they like better and which ones suit their needs going forward. At Forest Park, we're also doing an enrichment class through Project Lead the Way, because RIDE had a few of us trained through Project Lead the Way as well in computer science. So we'll be doing that at Forest Park this year to see how that works out with Project Lead the Way. The media specialists have been working very closely together to make sure that we are all teaching the same computer science standards, and we've been incorporating them into our everyday media classes. We're meeting on Friday again at PD, and we're meeting tomorrow for our Scratch class as a department too. So we've had a lot of really great opportunities, and we're really excited to see this get off the ground. Yeah.
So that's just a brief overview of what we're doing. We're going to be very busy throughout this next year coming forward. We have plans to meet as a team and also to include members of schools as we need to get information. Is there any questions for anybody on the panel?
You mentioned funding. How much do we get it from the Department of Ed?
Yeah, well, we had, there was actually, yes, there was funding that went along with this original initiative. So Victor Fay Wolf is at URI, and he had a whole team. He's a professor, and there was professors from RIC, and then there was also people from different teams that they had created. And so they would all come together. We would go to either RIC or to URI, and they'd facilitate for us, whatever it happened to be, computational thinking, whatever we were doing that day, visioning. And we came back, and there was a really big Google sheet to fill in tabs about what we were going to do, what we're going to do over the summer, what we're going to do in the fall, how are we going to include people out in the district, in the community, what are we going to need. And so right now, most of the things, whenever we do it, is always budget neutral. So that's why we picked code.org, because it is. And so as we're going through, we're going to be looking for opportunities to fund it and get grants, and right now we've been able to do that so far. Our Project Lead the Way, though, at the high school is a program, and in order for the students to get their credentials, we had to use a program that RIDE approved of, and RIDE approved of Project Lead the Way. So that's what we use, and that is a few $1,000s every year to get everybody rostered and to be able to get them their credentials.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
So in one of your slides that showed some statistics about before CS for Rhode Island said that most of the students that were taking this were white males.
Yeah, the 9 students, yeah.
Are we seeing a difference in our AP course right now, or courses?
Actually, yes. When you look at the roster of students that are been over the past 2 to 3 years, we have some CTE students, and we also have non-CTE students. When you look at the percentage of the classes, I don't have the actual number off the top of my head, but I would have to approximate it's going to be between 33 to 40% of the class is usually female.
That's great.
So,
Can I just ask a question about the high school?
Yep.
It's Computer Science A isn't running this year, is it?
correct. No, neither computer science
Or
A nor
cybersecurity, okay.
cybersecurity are running. They were offered, but as we said, we're in our second year as a fully
Right.
credentialed CTE.
Okay.
So there was interest by the student body, but just not enough to sustain an actual
Okay,
section.
that's what I thought. One of my sons was actually
Right.
hoping to take them, and isn't, and I thought,
But there are other aspects of it. There is the Computer Science Club is actually taking part in what's called the cybersecurity Cyber Patriot competition. They just met this past Sunday for the first time, where they spent 5 hours on Sunday as the round 1 of the competition.
Wow.
So there are actual other activities involved in it as well.
yeah, it's great. Actually, can I ask one more question? Because this is something from Jamestown that
No problem.
I've been thinking about, is the progression. So it's
Mhm.
kind of like with foreign language.
Right.
I remember one of my sons last year was taking AP Computer Science Principles.
Yep.
And he was learning to code in a certain language.
Right.
And then I'm at a Jamestown School Committee meeting, we have like the third graders come in, and they're presenting, and they're coding in the same language.
Right.
So how will that, for you guys, like, map so that when someone is in high school, and obviously their knowledge level is higher, the AP classes
Right.
will, especially principals, will adapt to meet their needs?
So, as Dr. Manzeri said, at the high school we subscribe to the Project Lead the Way curriculum. So the courses that are offered are Project Lead the Way courses, and we actually get their curriculum with their activities. In computer science principles, they start off with the Blockly language, which is kind of a little more. I don't want to use the word elementary, but it's drag and drop, so on and so
Right.
forth. And they proceed up towards Python and getting into more textual languages. When you get into, so that course is more about the aspect of what it takes to go into programming, the logic behind it, and they're
Okay.
using a medium that's a little bit easier for everybody to understand. When you get into the computer science A, that's going to be the text-based Java.
Right,
And
so
so
that's
that's
serious.
correct.
Yeah, okay.
So-
It's interesting. tough to keep up with.
Yeah, just a couple. Sally, you.
I'm done, thanks.
So it sounds like at the middle school, we have either elective or you're integrating it into assessments in regular classes, but can use those principles. But at the elementary school, if we're using that code.org, is that displacing? I'm thinking from a time perspective. So how are we integrating that given the day is packed already?
So I'm going to let Jess answer that because we did answer that in the question. I let her talk to everybody.
Yeah, so I would say, looking at our curriculum, the computer science, the CS for All, is not just about coding, and it's not just about teaching the kids to code. It's about making them become real 21st century learners. So when we redid our curriculum, we looked not only at the library standards, but we also looked at the ISTE standards. We looked at the CS4RI standards. We tried to crosswalk both standards to make a program that is equitable and that incorporates computer science into their library classes. Coding is something that I've always done with my kids since I became a librarian, so for me it was great. We're going to do coding, you know, the kids love it, but it's more than just the coding piece. That helps them become computational thinkers, carries over into their math classes. They're really working on those algorithms when they're thinking about their coding and how to think in that different order. But then when you get into, I know Brian talked about digital citizenship, sorry, that's something that we do in grades 3 to 5, and we even start with K to 2. When we're talking about fair and equitable use, we do that as well. So it's not just the coding, we're taking that computer science piece and we're incorporating it into all of our library classes that way as well. So a lot of it was already in practice for most of my department, so it's kind of like we just took it, added a little to it, tweaked it a little, and made it more CS4NK.
Thank you. And just more of a comment. I know you mentioned with the design thinking that our media specialists were doing that. I would encourage you to think even bigger, to go, how can you use design thinking to, like, for larger cohorts? So for example, 5th graders going to 6th grade, that transition day they have, or that orientation day, or 8th graders to 9th graders, right? They come a day early. Like, that's a great opportunity to have a design thinking exercise that gets them already not only integrated in the building and stuff, but already in that mode of things. Or opportunities, you know, I saw somewhere where like the town did a playground. I thought, boy, they should really ask kids. Like, if you were designing a playground, that's a great design thinking exercise for elementary kids. If you were designing a new playground, how would you do it? I'm thinking the town probably got a bunch of adults together and said, this is what we think. Like, wouldn't it be great to have a design? So I would just encourage you to think, are there opportunities to get larger things? I would point out, if you go to the Gordon Middle School, I think, they do for their entire school a design thinking exercise. They put it online. Great opportunity to sort of think, how can we think bigger on some of these things? Because it is hard to sort of do that.
Pull it all together.
Yeah, I just want to thank Dr. Mianseri and the team for giving us your time tonight and your leadership on this initiative. It's important work. It brings us into the 21st century where we ought to be, and I can't think of a better, more professional team of talented educators to lead this effort, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well-deserved round of applause.
So next on our agenda is our food service presentation.
So tonight we have Trish Cawley, who is our food service manager. We have a request on the agenda also for pricing for meals, but I thought it was a good time, and Trish thought it would be a good time for her to, you know, kind of do a update where she is with food service. Trish is always doing something really great and initiative, you know, and takes a lot of initiative with her team. So she's kind of got the good, the bad, and the ugly on here tonight. So go ahead, Trish.
I have Clint Eastwood, showing my age. What I want to talk about tonight is just the local meal price analysis that I did, my proposal to increase the prices, how being an independent operator is value added for not only the schools but the communities as well, and staff retention and substitute staffing. So when we decide on prices, every year the USDA has us take our October numbers and we do a weighted average for what a lunch costs. For 2019, 2020, the what year we're in right now, we needed to be charging $3 per meal. Our weighted average was $2.98. So because it was so close, and it's all calculated on a template, but $2.98 to $3, it comes up that you did not have to increase your rate. But if we were in a position to increase our rate, we can only increase it in 10-cent increments. So where we are, and if you look on the top, our elementary and our breakfast are lower priced than the neighboring towns. And our middle and our high school are higher priced. But when you did the median average, we were at $2.98. We were right on target. So when you look at these other pricing, they're playing catch up. I just want to make that clear. And so with it being $3 last year, it's going to be a higher rate when we get notified, like in the spring, to do our October numbers. So I expected that we would it would be mandated for us to increase our lunches by 10 cents anyway. So I just want to explain this just because it looks a little like bold, but other districts are playing catch up for what the costs are. If we were to increase our pre-K to 12 lunch by 10 cents starting January 1st, we generate close to $14,000 in revenue based on our 18-19 numbers. If we increase our breakfast by 10 cents, we'd increase our revenue by $1,000. And this is something that we would be doing, when you go by 10 cents per year, we could have done this 10 cents in September. Now I say that would have been easier then, but you know what? Better late than never, where we could do 10 cents in January and 10 cents in September and just stay ahead of it and never get into a position where we're having to play catch up. Value added to students and households. Some of these initiatives are, one of them right now is something brand new for us, is the Blessings in a Backpack. As it's expanded to each school, it's experienced some growing pains because the people change, the food changes, the vendor changes. So I met with Cindy Bowe and she was just like, what can we do? Well, we have 2 trucks on the road. So what we are going to be doing, we also have, it's all like every Blessing in a Backpack is a little satellite operation. And for some people, it's their baby and they love it and they don't want us changing something that's not broken. But in other cases, there's some struggles with volunteerism. So what we are going to do is Cindy's going to just compile her volunteers at Davisville Academy, where the majority of the items are kept. And we're going to be setting up the backpacks, and then our driver is going to be picking up the backpacks on Thursday afternoon, and we'll be delivering them to the elementary schools Thursday afternoons and Friday mornings, and just taking that weight off of some of the stress that they're experiencing right now. So that's something, it's just great. We have transportation, we're moving around, someone needs a little help, and once we get the elementaries going, then we'll roll it up to the higher levels. And we're in our 3rd year of collaborating with the high school skills class, and we all learn from each other in that, and they come in every other day. And we have 1 student who comes in daily. We have 2 students who are able to run registers, and I had a great moment about a month ago. I went into McDonald's in Wakefield, and one of our life skill kids was at the register. And I was just so proud that he was doing it. And of course he had to say, oh, I've been here for 6 weeks and now I do this and that. He gave me his whole life story, but it was just such a cool thing because he was one of them who ran the register at the high school. And he graduated a few years ago and I never ran into him. And then all of a sudden I was like, wow. And he had to give me a full report on his life, which was cute. So that is ongoing, and we're assisting them. They're doing a luncheon tomorrow for the high school, and so they've been using their math skills, and they're doing stuffed peppers and rice pilaf and all that. So it's all a matter of them getting what they need, when they need it, counting out. So they're having a big banquet. School gardens. School gardens just went to a new level this year because of Stony Lane. Stony Lane had such an incredible harvest that we regularly served Stony Lane vegetables at the high school level. And that was all on their part, not on my part. They were just, as the weather changed and things like that, they were like, could you use this? It's like, bring it in, bring it in. And through that, one student had done her senior project last year. She had done a raised bed in the courtyard of the high school. So then just through the connection through the Stony Lane Garden, they were like, well, we have romaine that's not going to make it. But if we bring it over to the courtyard and put it in the courtyard, it's protected. Bring it over to the courtyard. Well, then, of course, Mr. Simmons' plant science class was like, who put romaine out there? It wasn't us. So then they came down. And they said, well, can we be the ones watering and weeding and taking care of your romaine? And I mean, this stuff is just connecting. There's connections and connections going on. So we'll be harvesting that in the near future, only for me to hear something about a hoop house, which has me continuing apparently to go out into the courtyard. But I mean, this is the stuff that's such a blast too. And let's see, what else? Oh, increasing our catering revenue by 40%. So our catering was $53,000 last year. And we are not a bologna and ham salad catering operation. It's just like with our lunch program. We are not basic. North Kingstown's not basic. We're not going to be basic. And through the catering, we've kind of fostered some relationships with corporate clients, the Girl Scouts of Southern New England, Gloria Gemma Foundation, Rhode Island Commerce Corporation. So these people are people who also want to be supporting local food and local business. And by making that profitable, we're able to put that money back on the plates for the kids. We do run a higher plate cost, and I'm proud of that compared to the other districts in Rhode Island. And just our cafeterias. I'm going to show a little video at the end of that about the high school, but for people through RIDE, other people who come into the buildings, when people walk into our cafeterias with the artistry, the creativity, you don't walk into cafeterias like that anywhere else in the state. And it just makes you happy. It makes everybody happy. If it's an adult group at night, things like that, they're all happy. Communication 4 class at the high school. I have 2 wonderful students who track me down every other day, Sierra Fiore and Georgia Weddergren. And when we see the video, that's what they've been doing. They did a video on introducing the staff. We have one staff member who's from Haiti. He's been here for 7 years. So when he introduced himself and they videotaped him, he did it in French, and they translated it on the bottom. And that made a connection for people seeing Patrick. They're like, hey, the students are like, they think it's cool. And I think it's cool because Patrick calls our food cuisine. So we're going to see that. This month, we're in Rhode Island Month. Couldn't believe this. What that has to do with, get back there. We got notified by the Rhode Island Food Policy Council. They were looking for a district that is just constantly local, agricultural, regionally, just has it really built into our system, not to just do it, oh, we're going to do this today and this month. It's just an ongoing thing. And it's kind of funny because, the interview was very long over the phone, and they buried us deep into the article. It's called Green Acres. And, but there's definitely been feedback because people read Rhode Island Monthly. And now, now for the tough part. The 24% of our employees have left since school started to go for higher paying wages. And it's not an employer's market right now. And I'm just so fortunate that I have these dynamos, the other 75%. And what I would like to look at in the future is the staffing for substitutes in particular, because Mary and I are going to be working on the upcoming contract negotiations, but right now maybe we can do something with that substitute rate to get people to apply. We've advertised, people apply, but they don't accept the position. ABM, our custodial staff, you know, they start $1 more an hour than we do. And good news, back to the good news. Lunch participation's up 7%. We're serving 61 more lunches per day, and it's pretty much a little bit of every grade. And this is what Sierra and Georgia did, and it's the before and after for the high school, which is not completed yet, but it gives you an idea of things. This gets your attention, the business. So that's just another connection that we are, I know I like to watch it a lot, but, Travis, I think, thank you for your time. Questions?
Any questions? Okay.
No.
Thank you very much for all your time.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can you just talk how the federal reimbursement rate is going? Is it steady? Is there any increasing?
They, what they are really pushing is the community, is the school eligibility. If you have over 60% free and reduced, they are really just pushing community eligibility. And what that is, if we were to do that, the Quinessett number is, it is tipping, but if we were to make that community eligible, we would be getting the 327 for all the free kids, the people who actually would be free and reduced. And then for a student who was paid, we'd be getting the paid reimbursement. But the way they look at it is you're going to have so many more kids eating who are free and reduced because not 100% of them participate in the program, even though they get the benefit. You have that 40% that they said the free and reduced reimbursement's going to cover it, but we would be getting like 37 cents for every paid student. So when I plug those numbers in, which I do yearly, that's where they're pushing the country, but we don't fit into that mold right now.
But the general rate is staying, and is there?
It's just not, it's staying put.
And I know there was some discussion, the current administration might tweak some of the previous administration rules regarding, like I know there's a big discussion about chocolate milk and other things. Is any of that sort of died down, or there's stuff coming that's just sort of stalled, or really?
Well, there's opportunity to relax our standards if we chose to do that in writing with the Department of Ed, but we actually follow the Rhode Island regulations, which pretty much you don't want to really make those changes anyway. But there are parts in the country that they, would rather just put in the paperwork and say, okay, we're going to sell, just white pasta, white bread, white everything. But that's really not where we are. And our kids have been having it for like 7 years now, 7 or 8 years. So, but
So
that
it
also
defaults to
comes
the
at a
state.
higher
Yeah,
cost.
the state,
It comes at a-
the state's higher, yeah.
Yeah. but you really wouldn't want to go backwards, but there does seem like there is some opportunity if, somebody wanted to pursue it. But it's really staying pretty stagnant, actually, the reimbursement itself.
Dr. Zink?
I want to thank Trish for all your leadership.
Thank you.
We are so happy and blessed to have you in this district. Your leadership on things like the local farms, our connection to them, the catering that you do, that's something that a lot of districts don't do. The beauty of these lunchrooms and just the quality of the food in North Kingstown. It's something that a lot of people comment to me about how happy they are with those services. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I can tell you, I will not forget the first time that I was at I think it was one of the committees for hiring a principal or something, and we had the lunch provided, and I was like, oh wow, where did this come from? And I said, no, it came from North Kingstown. I was like, wow, all right, great. That was really good, and I thought it was Panera or something.
We're
doing a great job.
We're feeding on Friday, the PD day. 250 students from Vassar are going to be over there, and that was part of the reason why we were hired by the Commerce Corporation for Supply RI, because Supply RI is using Rhode Island vendors and Rhode Island businesses. They had an event in Newport, and they were just hitting a dead end, and in order to handle the amount. And of course, if we're going to do the catering, we want it to be repeat business. So, but thank you, Dr. Roach.
Okay. So next item on our agenda are citizens' comments. There's always a sign-up sheet in the back. If anyone has signed up, or if you didn't, you'd still be given an opportunity to talk.
We have a couple of recognitions.
Oh, sorry, I skipped. Sorry. Quickly, recognitions. Yep, sorry. No,
It's
my
okay.
mistake.
We've got a couple ready to go, so.
We'll get there in a minute.
All right, thank you, because
Sorry.
I want to
No,
make
no,
sure
it's
we
okay.
recognize these teachers. All right, so the first recognition is Ms. Susan Erickson. She was nominated by a former student, Wyndham Chase, class of 2017, to be the recipient of the 2019 Benjamin Peterson Award for Excellence in Teaching Secondary School Chemistry. So this past month, she was awarded that at a dinner for the American Chemical Society, and I just really feel like Wyndham's remarks, from the way that Ms. Erickson describes the fascinating complexities of chemistry as she teaches, to her willingness to further investigate questions to which she may not know the full answer, to her incorporation of chemistry in the news and current events into class, Ms. Erickson's passion for chemistry and dedication to lifelong learning is inspiring. And I will tell you, she inspired Wyndham to major in chemistry at Williams College, so she's going there. So that is the first recognition. The second recognition, which is actually later on your agenda, I'm going to be asking you to approve this, but I'm hoping it goes well. The North Kingstown High School received a $20,000 STEM program from the East Bay Educational Collaborative and the U.S. Office of Naval Research, and that is good news for STEM for our North Kingstown community. Chemistry high school teachers Susan Erickson and Richard Sweetman will receive $20,000 worth of chemistry equipment, supplies, and training from East Bay Educational Collaborative on October 28th and 29th. Funding for this program, A Natural Approach to Chemistry, came through a U.S. Office of Naval Research program, and it's prioritized applicants serving the naval and military communities, and so North Kingstown was selected as one of the 10 recipients out of Rhode Island. So congratulations to them for putting in the work to get that. And then finally, this just came today, Rhode Island students represented an all-national honor ensemble festival. So Mrs. Silvera sent this forward to me from the weekly commissioner's memo to teachers, and there were only 5 students that were selected, and our own Elizabeth Byerline from North Kingstown High School and her teacher Norma Kayaza, the director, she is going to be on the National Association for Music Education and the All-National Honor Ensemble Festival.
Congratulations.
All right, and that's in November. So thank you very much, and congratulations to everybody involved.
So next to mention citizens' comments. I have Pam Panero. If you could come to the microphone again, state your name and address, please. And we ask if you could please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Pam Panero, 710 Slocum Road. I'm here again tonight to request an exemption be added to the current building use fee schedules for nonprofit youth groups such as Girl Scouts. I wrote an entire speech. However, I find it very ironic that I just sat through 2 wonderful presentations that really support Girl Scouts 100%. Girl Scouts has a whole STEAM program to it. My Scouts have already programmed robots, learned about coding. I've volunteered my time to become Code.org certified in order to provide these opportunities with my Scouts. Girl Scouts does think outside the box, and we think big. We ask girls to take action by looking at their community and solving problems. Exactly what Bob Jones was talking about, his comment to the group. That's what we do as Girl Scouts. We look at the community, we find problems, the girls find solutions, and then they act on them. Our second presentation tonight was about our food service. And as it mentioned, volunteers for Blessings in a Backpack. I had a local troop at North Kingstown there this week, volunteering their time for Blessings in a Backpack. So I just found it ironic that we very much in line with what the school department does. We enhance what the school department does. We are volunteers. We are not asking for much. We are asking for a space to provide this critical service to our girls. STEAM is important to Girl Scouts because we want to see more girls in science, technology, engineering, and math. Okay? So anyway, back to my speech. Our last meeting, I gave you evidence for our surrounding town exemptions for Girl Scout meetings. This week I will talk to you about impact. Our operating costs are extremely low in order to allow everyone to join. The fees being asked are at a minimum 50% of what our budgets typically are. We are small groups, and unlike some groups, don't have the numbers to offset this significant cost. 2 real-life impacts that have already occurred. One of my Scouts was redistricted last year, and in an effort to keep her connected to Stony and her friends she left, she is continuing at the troop at Stony. She likes going back to the school. She even gets to see some of her former teachers. This has helped with her transition to Hamilton. This is now in jeopardy due to the building fees. I have another Scout who is also redistricted to Hamilton, and she decided to join the Hamilton troop. Originally, that troop was meeting right after school at Hamilton. Since receiving their building use fee, which they couldn't afford, they have moved the meeting out of the school. Now this same Scout's parents are struggling to get her to the meeting because now they have to leave work early and pick her up to get to the meeting location. Our troop made this decision last year to continue meeting at Stony, having no knowledge that our fees would change come the fall. We submitted paperwork in July to confirm our space, and we were approved. We received a bill the week before our first meeting, having no warning it was coming. These decisions have real-life impacts, and they are already starting to occur. We are meeting when the school is still open and when custodians are still working. All of our neighboring towns have found a way to provide this exemption, and I believe we can too. I feel strongly that Girl Scouts and other scouting programs should be exempt from these fees. We are all volunteers, and we are providing a valuable service to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone? Sir? Anyone who didn't sign up like to speak? Mr. Jones, you wanted to?
Yes, I would make a motion to move items 5D. I might as well move item K.
Okay.
Interest rates, up in the agenda, following the superintendent.
Okay.
Superintendent wants to.
So the way I usually do it is rather than have you make a motion with unanimous consent, I have no issue juggling the agenda around. Does anyone object to bringing those 2 items up for consideration at this time? Yep, okay. So we will move those items up on our agenda. So the first, I'll take them in order still, would be item K, which is the approval of adjusted food service rates.
So I would make a motion to increase the elementary school and the breakfast prices by 10 cents effective January 1st, 2020.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second, so discussion. So I just point out that would be only the elementary, what did you say, elementary
And
breakfast.
and breakfast? Okay.
Breakfast across
So we'd be,
the
we'd be
district.
Yeah,
leaving the,
breakfast is across the
yeah,
district.
across, we'd be leaving the middle and high school alone
Lunch.
for now, okay.
Yes, that's my motion.
Okay, and, I mean, I know that, you know, from the presentation, and I know Mrs. King, you can speak to that, that it's likely that we'd need to make further adjustments probably over the summer or.
Yeah, I would see us coming back possibly in May if we were looking for September, because that would give parents time. They would know before they left in June what we were planning on doing in September. So that would be the plan. And if not, then perhaps we would come back in August or September, but maybe we would not start as soon as school started.
Any other discussion on that?
So the amount that you had in the presentation, that was for all.
She, right, the
It was,
proposal was across the board, but I just want to make sure that doing that is not going to cause, we aren't in danger of running a deficit this fiscal year based on those numbers, or it'll be close, right?
I'm
I
gonna
mean,
be honest with you, we were very, very close last year. And, you know, we really got a pretty good boost up, as Trish Cawley mentioned, with a lot of the catering that she did. So when we did, several years ago, there were some changes made to that certified contract. We knew that we were gonna be getting closer to a point of tipping back over the other way. I have to be honest with you, I think one of the reasons why that program has not seen even a small deficit is because it's not fully staffed at any given point. And that's certainly not for lack of trying. So I can't tell you that.
Okay, but we don't see the $100,000 deficits
Oh,
we
absolutely
had
not.
10 years ago.
Absolutely not, no way. But we are gonna be, you know, I had said that we were gonna be getting closer and closer to that over the top, and we will get there all the time.
I know Trish talked about the fact that we've seen an increase in the last month over last year, but how many kids are actually buying their lunch? Like, is there do we know a percentage of how many in the district are buying their lunch each
About
day?
1,100 are buying their lunch.
Okay.
And then in the secondary levels, there's many students who might bring a sandwich, but then they're buying the other items that go with it. And then you can put that, usually you would take that dollar value and divide it by the price of the lunch. That would bring it up to, so it would be like 1,400. But
Okay.
yeah.
So it's, the 1,100 is
The
mostly
1,100
elementary
is the
level.
straight lunch with no additional.
So what's the percentage of that? How many kids are at the
Oh,
elementary?
of elementary, well, we have 4,000 total. Elementary is probably what? 19,000, right. About half.
Okay, yeah, okay.
And one point I just want to make is, and we were trying to figure out when it was, do you know when the last time there was an increase in the rates? It's been a very long time. It's, I think it's
It's
like
been 7 or 8 years
Yeah,
ago.
7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to make that point as well. So-
Yeah, I've been here for over 7, and I don't recall a request for an
Yeah,
increase since I've been
my
here.
guess would be about 8.
So if we make this change, it would go into effect in January.
Right.
We would let parents know
Yes.
now.
Yes.
This was
And
happening.
then you think you would come back in May with possibly another change?
For September.
Quite quickly, and probably all across all.
Yes.
Okay.
Initially 10 cent on elementary schools, and then an additional 10 cent on elementary schools in September, so twice.
So, any
And
other-
I do think
sorry.
we have some work to do on breakfast. Breakfast is pretty low.
Breakfast is low. And the breakfast reimbursement is low.
Yeah.
Well, we have a motion and a second, so if there's no further discussion. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Next. Thank you, again. Next, we have item 5D, which is the approval of the change to the building use policy. Mr. Jones, you asked to bring it forward. Do you want to start?
I'll have to start with a motion to approve the amended language to the building use policy. I don't have the wording right.
It's on the agenda, so yeah, so as proposed.
As proposed in the agenda report.
So I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Ms. Hildebrand, discussion.
I'm gonna start out by saying that I do believe that the Girl Scouts should be a group that does come back and give to the community with, again, blessings in a backpack. They built the bridge in Stony Lane that was dysfunctional in our walking trail. They do a lot for our community, and I do see it being a huge hindrance to girls not being able to stay right after school to be able to go to some of these meetings. I also find it financially cumbersome for a lot of these smaller troops to be paying. It was a repercussion of, our decision to charge these building use fees, but I do believe there are certain groups and a certain small amount of groups that should qualify for an exemption. The Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, because they're mostly town members, they are school-age kids, they are supporting our town, and then they turn around and support our schools. I really believe that we really should come up with some sort of exemption for those groups.
Can I ask, just,
Yeah.
because I'm new and I don't know the history
Sure.
of it, can somebody explain the active thinking behind the initial?
Sure.
Yeah.
Part of it is borne by a couple things. One is the general discussion in the state about the maintenance of educational facilities in general. So, what was it, 2017, Mary? The state commissioned a report called the Jacobs Report, where they went into every school and said, here's priority 1 through 5. And I think the entire state was like 200 billion. It was some very large number that was also part of the genesis for that state bond initiative that also required everything else. But locally, I would say, there's been plenty of discussion about the town hall and other things, and it's sort of the general point of going, we do regular maintenance, but how do we preserve the capital items? And the feeling has been, for right or wrong, often it is wait until it's completely in disrepair and then ask for a bond to bring it up. I think the policy of the committee, at least the last few years, has been, we request, capital amount from the town, separate from the funding. And we've been asking for, incremental amounts that go, for example, last couple of years, one for a bus, one for a playground every year, one for district technology, one for security. And the thought being is, if we could get little chunks every year, we would either make those improvements and/or we would start to stockpile them, so in the future, when the big need came, we're not asking for a bond or we're not asking for a big special tax levy. So the feeling, especially generated with the turf field, is we know we have to replace that in 10 years. We need to start charging users for the space so we can use that rental fee to help offset the fact that, for better or for worse, our capital funding as part of our budget thing has been zero for 7 of the last 8 years, something like that. A year ago or 2 years ago, we got 500,000, well, 444,000 from the town.
Wasn't renewed last year.
Which wasn't renewed. And so the thought is, from small amounts to large amounts, obviously based on if you're a for-profit, non-profit, North Kingstown, not North Kingstown. But we would expect users to help us pay for the depreciation of these things. I fully appreciate the problem when you get into that is there are clearly groups that you might say are more deserving than others. So how do you get into the point of sort of picking, telling one group you're more deserving, so you should be waived, and telling another group you're not? It might be a good conversation when we get to the CIP, about whether if we get certain funding from the town, then maybe we don't need to charge certain fees to support those. But in the absence of that, at some point, we rely on fund balance to keep those. And so it sort of becomes a collective problem of, again, I fully appreciate you, that's why the motion is to cut the fees in half. for now. I think one of the challenges we have to wrestle with
But
is
to be
if we give.
specific, it's tailored in a way that groups that
Well-
use the space on a very regular basis, it would be
Correct.
cut in half.
Right, one of the
Certain
issues is if
spaces.
you totally waive it for those who frequently use it, what happens if 20 groups and nonprofit groups come in and say, oh, I want it 5 times because that qualifies me for the free rate? Then you're sort of picking and choosing based on, right, availability and who gets what, right? So I think that's part of the discussion, not to totally waive the fee. But again, I could see, you know, this is a start. I think it's sort of tied for me to, you know, what capital funding we get.
How, who else is affected? Like, who else receives bills for?
Anyone using space.
Everyone.
Does that include?
Everyone but a town, like town rec.
The town
It's
rec
owned by the
department.
town, would
Okay.
not, but everyone else who's a non-town.
And I'm wondering if 5 or more times between now and June would, I mean, I would imagine the Girl Scouts meet every 2 weeks in the school or every week.
Yeah.
They're not gonna qualify for that 50% if
Oh, they
they're.
would.
Oh, they would.
Oh, 5 or
If you
more.
meet.
Yeah,
I'm
See,
so
that's
sorry.
the problem
Okay.
if you say
The regular
zero.
users like that would
If
qualify.
we made it
yeah.
free, for example, not to jump in the middle of you, but let's say we made it free, then any organization would say, oh, well, let's book the conference room 10 times, and maybe one of them show up for half of them
Then we'll
because
get
it's free.
right.
Now we're free when we wouldn't have been otherwise. So it's trying to figure out a way to.
I just find that you can find wording for the Girl Scouts and troops like that, again, we had talked about whether, you know, it's, the majority of the kids are in the school at North Kingstown, it's right after school, it's when the custodian, I mean, I don't care how wordy it is, I just feel like it is a financial sacrifice, and the overall Girl Scouts is not gonna pay for every troop in the state if they, to house their meetings. So they'll encourage them to find someplace that's not charged, like United Methodist Church or, you know, somewhere else. And then now you're pushing them off-site, and I feel like, I really think that it's a detriment to that particular group of North Kingstown students who then turn around and give back to our community in every way.
I have a similar hesitation with, and the way this is worded, I would feel like not only Girl Scouts, but would PTOs fall under this umbrella as well, since they are a nonprofit organization? They often do charge admission for their school dances and haunted, you know, festivals and stuff like that.
No, I'm pretty sure our building use policy
It
is
specifically
specific, not
mentions
PTO.
PTO.
It does,
Yes.
okay.
It does.
It just seems
Because one difference is the
Broad.
PTO exists only
For the
to
understood.
school
benefit
department.
that school.
Understood,
But
but
that-
I
that's
didn't
the
read that
only
in
reason,
the,
Yeah.
in the
yes.
description, okay.
And that's what's
Um,
different about a PTO.
I mean, I just see this group as, it's all kids from North Kingstown participating in it, in those schools, at their school, most of them. Every once in a while, you get a child from a different school because there's no other troop or things like that. I really feel like there should be some sort of exemption.
So how many are nonprofit organizations that we sent bills to, like, are the majority of them nonprofits? Yeah.
See, you know, you've got, and the big thing that we do have a different schedule for nonprofits, but then they fall into the higher schedule if they're charging admission, because then that means you've got a lot of wear and tear on your facility. But most of them we don't have too many for-profits that use our facility.
And do we have, in addition to Girl Scouts, do we also have other scouting agencies? I mean, I don't know how we could say Girl Scouts is exempt, but nobody else is.
This is the
I mean,
problem.
Yeah,
As
but I'm
you-
just wondering, like,
Boy
how,
Scouts.
I was thinking, are Boy Scouts included,
I
or
don't think
other-
Boy Scouts, I don't think they use our space.
They use Hamilton.
We have, Boy Scouts do. I
They
know we
meet at
have Girl
Hamilton.
Scouts at Hamilton, Stony Lane, I don't know if we still do at Forest Park.
Community chorus.
Mary, do you
Big
remember what the
user
letters
at
are
the
for
high
the policy?
school
I'm just
or-
trying to find it.
Yeah.
Or even what section.
And they're
But again,
mostly
community
meeting.
chorus is adults in the community too, it's not just children, you know, these specifically are children in the schools that are, you know, it's basically an after-school activity that then gives back to our community.
Could we say something about it being specific for serving children in a nonprofit?
Well,
I don't know.
but
So
you-
then I would say.
I can tell you that you get groups like, I believe the Jaguars are nonprofit, they're using the athletic
They're
fields.
using an athletic facility, so
So,
could,
but-
in
But
that.
again, you're
Right.
saying like in the
Too.
cafeterias, in the library,
Right.
you know, still keep that wording, or say Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts.
I understand your point. I guess, you know, in thinking about how to, you know, the motion's about reducing the fee. I think it could be a second motion to say, could you delay the due date on the invoice until the end of the year, for example, to see if the town funds our capital request? Because we may put in a special request for the cafeterias and the media centers and stuff, which we've never sort of asked for capital funding before. And if we receive funds from the town, you could argue, right, the whole point is to build funds for replacement. So if we're getting it from one source, then we don't need it from another. The challenge we have is we haven't been getting it from another source, so we only rely on fund balance, and we really never budget for fund balance. It's because we find efficiencies in our operations to pay for that. So in the end, somebody's paying. The question is, you know, until we identify other payers, the logical point is the users need to contribute somehow. But again, I would argue, obviously we could look at, we're obviously cutting it in half at this point. I mean, we could look at least delaying
That seems to
the
me like
date.
it just is kicking the can down the road.
Well,
And then
it is, except
these bills accumulate and all of a sudden
They would owe them.
they would owe.
Well,
the
it
same amount of
would
money.
just be for this fiscal year, because this policy is only good through, this amendment's only good to the end of this fiscal year.
Mhm.
So
And then
we're gonna have to,
Right.
we're gonna have to address this issue again in May or at some point, in April or May, you know, after we get our budget allocation. So, again, my only worry if you totally exempt it is we're, at this point, as far as I know, exempting it just for one organization. And now, if I was in other organizations, I would do what you said, I would try and get five, and that's the problem we've had historically, is another reason we have a fee, is that some groups would come in and go, I want it for, you know, God rest his soul, but, you know, Al would, you know, just book based on, you know, tons of spaces. There's other groups that would come in and just say, because it was free, right, or we didn't bill till after for only actual use, they would take up weeks and days of space and then only use it maybe 10% of the time. We were only billing them for actual use. So we were actually losing out then. So part of this of making people pay in advance was you're gonna pay whether you use it or not. So people will be more judicious in the reservation. So again, I see the point. It's just sort of unless, you know, we're sort of gonna take a step back on everyone. I don't think we can exempt one group.
Then how do other towns do it?
Well, I looked at some of that. Other towns, their towns fund their capital requests from the school.
But I'm pretty confident, like, the town of North Kingstown charges nonprofits for use. If you want to book the community center in your Girl Scout
Right.
group, you pay for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Yes.
I mean,
Can you remind us of the fees? Again, I know it was in the original policy, but.
yep, I have it,
So
so.
Schedule A and
Yeah.
Schedule B.
Yeah,
So-
but like for, what are we?
A community nonprofit, a multi-purpose room in an elementary school is $20 an hour. If you need kitchen facilities, it's $40 an hour, and classrooms are $20 an hour. Most of them are, if you're talking like a classroom space, it's 20. If you need the kitchen, it's 40. And I understand, I mean, the reason that I think I originally suggested the sort of multi-use discount is that there's a big difference between coming in once and paying $20 or coming in for 2 hours and paying 40
Right.
than the amount that it's hitting your groups. And I understand that because you use them on such a regular basis. So I think we definitely can try to craft, you know, a way to give a discount to nonprofit groups that use them a lot. You know, and that was part of the reason for crafting this way, is it picks that up. I just don't see a way that we can make it absolutely free. That's the issue. And as I mentioned, I mean, the town doesn't either. You know, they charge for their facilities as well for the same reason. We give a hefty discount to nonprofits. You
How
know,
much
I mean,
does this actually profit? Like, how much do we actually bring in? Are we allowed to discuss that?
yeah, the year's not done yet,
Well, it's
so
the
we
first-
don't know.
it's
It's
the
first
first
year.
time.
We-
I know.
First time we've been
Yeah.
aggressively
Well,
doing this.
you know, if you really did a deep analysis of how much it costs you for electricity and how much it costs you for the custodian to clean up that room and all that, I can guarantee you,
Right.
you're not making anything. That's why, you know, and I don't want this to be offensive to the Girl Scouts. It is a nominal amount of money for us. It's because of altogether, it's the use of the wear and tear of the school. I understand it's not nominal for them, so I don't mean that whatsoever. But it is the first year that we're really, where I think people don't understand or they don't remember. So the whole thinking of using the space before the custodian leaves, okay, comes from before we outsourced our custodial services. Because if you were there after hours and the
Paid overtime.
custodian got paid overtime,
Right.
then that would have to be a charge to the group. So that just lingered for many, many years, even though we outsourced almost 7 years ago. That's really no longer valid. We don't get charged by them unless it's a, you know, way special event, a Sunday or whatever, and that does get passed through as well. So that no longer fits. But I don't, you know, I can guarantee you that what we take in is not going to be even close to if we did a full analysis of how much it really costs to operate that area.
For an hour.
Right, and again, I'd say on that basis, the turf field, you know, will generate some
Right.
significant.
Actually, that will.
Point. And so again, if we start saying, well, we charge for this, but we don't charge for this, and we charge you if you're this kind of group, and we don't charge you if you're this kind of group, it just becomes problematic. But again, underpinning the whole policy was asking the taxpayers not to pick up the full cost of replacement, but ensuring there's attention to the fact that we want to maintain as we go along and not wait till it all falls apart.
I'm just thinking, we've set a relatively arbitrary amount of time and an arbitrary percentage off. That why couldn't there be additional language to make it a little bit more inclusive?
Inclusive in terms of.
I'm sorry, additional language to try to reduce the price for people who are doing good for our schools and
So
for our
define
community.
good for your schools, and I'm not trying to be vague.
No.
I perfectly admit what you're doing is good stuff.
There's
And
no
that's
one
what
at
I'm
this
talking
table
about.
that doesn't think you do good for the community. Don't
Yeah.
think for a minute that is it. It's a matter of coming up with, and this goes to your point, there are a lot of groups that use our facilities that do good for our community. So I don't disagree with you that I'd like to see what we can do to lessen the impact on groups like the Girl Scouts, but I don't want to get over-inclusive either where we run into a huge problem. And it's a matter of coming up with a balance there.
Yeah. Obviously, the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts Hamilton's getting a rain garden installed by the Boy Scouts in the next couple of weeks. And it's, volunteer work by a bunch of...
Right, so I might suggest, which is I wouldn't take up here, but adding to the policy an in-kind donation equivalent,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
could
Then
be.
you gotta
Yeah.
set a dollar amount on the,
Well,
on what the
yeah,
rain
it's
garden
somehow
costs. but-
documented, and then, yeah.
Right,
like
which then could be,
policies.
really more adjudicated by the administration to decide if the value of that, right, could qualify. So I would see, starting with this, and then, giving it back to the superintendent to start thinking about, but whether amending the policy to include an in-kind donation equivalent could be added to the policy, and
Will that include
that,
volunteer work and things?
yeah,
You know,
well,
like
I
if they
think,
do the
yeah.
lessons in
I mean,
backpack
Lessons
and
in
they do.
backpack.
Right,
the rain garden.
I'd let the superintendent, and the policy committee sort of wrestle with it for a second, but yeah, I could see that as
Yeah.
kind of an easy way to quantify doing good, because again, it's all about
And then giving them
the
the
space.
discount that way.
Well, right, either totally waiving it or giving some kind of discount and let the administration figure out what that appropriate equivalency would be.
And then that way you don't have to do it for everybody, you're doing it for people who are giving back to your schools and to the community and you.
So I would either say, we could vote down this and then propose a motion that sends it back to the superintendent to rethink, no discount, but adding a in-kind thing, or at least start with this.
Well, we can amend your motion too. Just vote it down, but we can do that too. Okay. It doesn't matter.
I'd like to, let's have a no vote once in a while.
All right, yeah, that's right. All right, so then, if we're ready to do that, we can replace this with another motion. So we have a motion and a second. So at this point, we can say, all those in favor?
No.
All opposed? No.
No.
Fails unanimously. We don't do that very often. So Ms. Healy,
And you made
get
me
that?
bring it up. No.
That's all your fault. All right, so now we can continue our discussion, but we would need a new motion.
So I'd make a motion that we task the superintendent through the policy subcommittee to propose an amendment to the building use policy that allows for in-kind donations to the building and/or the district to qualify for a reduced rate or an exemption on a case-by-case basis.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Now, one question I have for you, Mrs. King. When are the invoices that the people have been billed due?
I don't know, but we can, whatever you guys want me to do.
I'm sorry?
They were already due.
Okay.
Oh, would,
Yeah, sorry.
Well, at
Have
least
people
50%
paid?
would have been, yeah.
People have paid?
No,
No one's paid yet?
no.
So
there you go.
So I don't need to do a refund check.
I would say, I don't know if we need to do a formal motion on this, but I think that we can say, we do not want you to be taking aggressive collection action at this point.
Don't worry, I'll call them all off.
No one's gonna be taking you to small claims court while we work on this, okay? All right, my concern, Bob, I hear what you're saying, and I like the sentiment. It's a little unwieldy.
It's very
and
unwieldy, I have to be very honest with you.
I have a problem, what I want to try to come up with, what I'd like to come up with, is something that allows us to come up with a criteria that is uniformly applied, because leaving it to discretion, like you just mentioned, you're really weighing what one organization's charitable work is compared to another organization's charitable work. Okay, I personally am not comfortable saying Scouts are exempt, boy or girl. Okay, there are other groups that do good in the town. So I think what we really need to do is come up with a way to, to give them something that we can work with.
Well, I think some of the wording should be that it encompasses, it is a group of North Kingstown students, number one.
But most of the nonprofits that use our schools are.
All students? Like the chorus?
Even the
there's
Girl
no-
Scouts isn't all students.
What?
Even the Girl Scouts aren't all students. You're gonna have some kids who are not
Yeah.
students at the school. That go to a private school, that go to homeschool,
Charters.
charters.
I get your point.
Yeah.
I'm ready to take this on.
Yeah, I think at this point, we're just kicking it back to the superintendent.
And we'll come back again.
The only thing I would caution is the superintendent may come back and go, it's really unwieldy.
Okay.
Rain garden, is that all you got? Come on, you gotta up your game, come on.
And I'm pretty sure he's gonna tell you this is very unwieldy, just saying.
I know,
all right.
I know.
I'm
Because
just saying,
the other
we are
concern-
still just kind of kicking it
Mr.
down the
Chair,
road.
Yes.
before you vote,
Yes.
the one thing that you have to be cautious of is whatever you do for one nonprofit,
That's
you
my
have
point.
to do for
That's
all.
I know.
what I'm
Or we
saying.
will have
Correct.
You'll have
this church or this organization coming in and wanting.
And you get into
And then you'll
religious
be in a-
organization, any number of, that's why whatever we come up with.
It has to be for
It
everybody.
needs to be for everybody, and a criteria that works. That's why I was originally trying to, come up with, well, these groups tend to use these particular rooms that are relatively low impact and use them multiple times, so maybe we can come up with a rate that works with that. But
Well, that could be another option. Superintendent might come back.
so we'll revisit it. We're working on we're grappling with it and trying to figure out a way to get it to work.
I would say it's a very great civic exercise for organizations to, for example, go to the town council meeting and talk about the need to fund this because of the great work that your group does in the schools. And it would be a shame not to recognize that by the taxpayers and maintain the space.
Okay, so we have your motion and we have a second to task the superintendent.
Okay, I was gonna say, can we repeat the motion, because I don't remember.
Ms. Seelig, can you repeat the motion? Do you have it? Or do you need to watch the tape to get it?
Can you read my notes, check the
Actually,
video?
I do
Okay.
have it. I do
Okay.
have it.
I have most of it.
Yeah, okay.
What I had was task the superintendent through the policy subcommittee to propose an amendment to the building use policy that allows for in-kind work to qualify for an exemption of waiver of fees.
Perfect, that's pretty good. I think that's pretty much what you said. So we have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. So we're still working. But you don't have to pay the bill yet. We won't come after you.
But we will be checking town council attendance.
I like that idea.
So, moving backwards, we broke off from the agenda at the superintendent's report. Dr. Roget.
Oh, yes, wow, I
We
can't
we
believe we're finally there.
rewound. We rewound.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to mention that on tonight's meeting, there are crisis plans and safety hazard survey reports. Those are items that are discussed with the school committee in executive session, and that just speaks to the ongoing, emergency planning that is going on in this district. And, with the number of events, that occur on a regular basis in our schools, I'm really happy for the support of our fire department and our police department. And they help us to inform these plans. And so tonight, these are not public plans. It's advised against us being public about these things, but I just want to assure the public out there that we are working on these things on a yearly basis and on a regular basis with local police and fire to make sure our kids are safe.
And I'll just add to that the school committee reviews the district security plans each year and votes and authorizes them based on our comments. So next we have, anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Routine items, I need a motion to, it should say seal the executive session minutes of 10:29,
No.
right?
Yes.
No, we seal the
You're not
minute.
doing the vote, right, it's a
We
mistake.
seal the minutes and we disclose the vote. So I will make a motion to seal the executive session minutes of 10:29:19.
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. And I can disclose that no votes were taken this evening. Next, on the consent agenda, I'm going to exempt item C1 and item E5. Anyone else have anything they would like to exempt?
Excuse me, are you going to exempt E3 for the coaches?
Oh, sorry, I forgot to circle that. I wrote it and I didn't circle it. And E3, thank you. Anything else? If I could have a motion to approve the non-exempted consent agenda items.
So moved.
Second.
A motion from Ms. Hoskins, second from Mr. Jones. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? It passes unanimously. I'm going to make a motion to table item C1. We just need to work on those again and bring them forward again. If I could have a second.
Second.
I have a second from Ms. Hoskins. All those in favor of tabling item C1?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next, for item E3, we have one person who can't approve yet due to some paperwork issues. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve item E3 with the exception of Mr. Robert O'Clair, who was on the list as an assistant boys basketball coach. We'll have to revisit that. If I could have a second.
Second.
Have a second from Ms. Hoskins. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. And item E5, Mrs. King, I think you wanted to speak to that, and I'll jump on to it.
Yes, so item E5 is the formal announcement of the retirement of our transportation supervisor, John Horan. John is going to stay through September 30th, which is great for the district because he's going to help us make sure that his replacement, whomever that ends up being, is going to be able to get school up and running. John will be with the district for 16 years in February. He started in early February of 2004. And I've really appreciated the time, the 7 years that I've had here working with John. He's a very hard worker. It's very important to him that things are done right. And he is a great asset to the district. So I wish him well, I really do. Kind of bittersweet. He's one of my first department people to retire. And I am going to miss him.
And Mr. Moran has done tremendous work throughout the years, and you know he's in what is one of the more thankless positions in this district, because when people need to talk to Mr. Moran, it's because
You're usually not happy.
That's correct.
So and he handles himself well in those situations, and he's certainly been a good part of our emergency team. He's one of the guys up at 4 or 5 in the morning on a snow day, working with us to make the right determination. So he's been a great member of the team, and we're gonna miss him.
And I'd like to say as well, great thanks for all the hard work he does. It is absolutely not a job where people call you up and say, thank you very much. There's absolutely nothing wrong. It doesn't happen. So we very much appreciate, and I also very much appreciate his agreeing to stay on to help bring his I won't even say replacement, because I'm not sure we have a replacement. We would say successor.
You are right.
And bring that person up to speed so that we have a nice, smooth transition. So we want to thank him very much. We had, we have a motion in a second, right, Ms. Healy, at this point, or not yet?
Not
yet, I didn't think so,
neither.
okay. So I'll make a motion to approve item E5.
Second.
I have a second from Ms. Hoskins. Any discussion other than what we just did?
What if we said no?
Yes, what if we
Yes,
say
kidding.
no?
I know. I always ask that. Like, you're approving a retirement. What if you say no? You're approving a
He
resignation. What if you
has
say
to
no?
stay. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. That's the end of our consent agenda. Next is item F1. I know it was brought up a little bit during the recognition section, but if you could just quickly do another quick overview. I know you sort of mentioned what we have, but we're approving a grant, and I just want you to mention the dollar amount again.
Yes, it's $20,000, and the two teachers are Richard Sweetman, he's the department chair for the science department now this year, and also Susan Erickson. And they were at training yesterday and today, and what they'll do is they have the grant they could apply for, and it heavily, it's for chemistry teachers, and they will receive kits, and the rest is gonna be coming. They got one kit today to bring home with them, all the stuff that they use in the training. They spent 2 full days of training, and then they'll come back and they'll use all this STEM materials for the rest of the classes that they have at the high school. And there's a list, it's a pretty long list of equipment that comes with it, and the students of North Kingstown High School are definitely, there was a bunch of people that applied, 10 schools in the state got it, and we were, because we have some military students that come, that's what basically brought us through.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and thanks to the folks that put it all together. So I need a motion to approve item F. F1?
So moved.
Motion, Ms. Hoskins.
Second.
Second from Ms. Hildebrand. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, next, item G1. We've never discussed this because we need to do these kinds of things in open meetings. The North Kingstown ESP, which is the Educational Support Professionals Union, which is, we have the NKNEA, which is the Teachers Union. This is the union that sort of picks up all the support personnel. They have submitted a request to bargain for their next contract renewal. So we need to have, we can't have 3, so we usually do 2 school committee members on that committee. I would volunteer to do it. I don't know if someone else has to volunteer. Lisa, are you interested again? We had so much fun on
I've
the teacher's
experienced
contract.
that. Yeah, that's fine. I
Are
can
you,
volunteer.
and any objections from anyone else who really wanted to meet with us a whole lot and sit through some very, very long negotiations?
When do negotiations start?
They probably will not start until about February.
Okay.
So what we'll do is, their contract expires June 30th. We'll have a proposal.
Yep.
And we usually do the exchange of proposals February, March. We'll get started from there.
And you're a pro now. All right, so if someone could, I'm one of the people, so it might be better if someone else makes it.
I will make a motion to appoint our chair, Ms. Hildebrand, as the school committee members for the NKESP contract negotiations.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Jones, a second from Ms. Hoskins. All those in favor? Aye.
Can you vote on this?
Yeah, you can vote. We do not get a financial benefit from
Okay,
taking
good.
part in this. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next is, we already mentioned this briefly, if I could have a motion to approve item H1.
So moved.
A motion from Ms. Hoskins,
Second.
second from Ms. Hildebrand. So these are the school crisis plans that we discussed in executive session. Any discussion on them wouldn't really be appropriate, but all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next, we have the school committee approval of the site safety survey reports. Very similar. These are basically a self-assessment by the various schools as to the safety protocols and physical conditions and things like that existing in each school. If I could have a motion to approve item I1. So motion from Ms. Hoskins. Second from Mr. Jones. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next, item J. This was also discussed in executive session. I need a motion regarding this grievance.
I'll make a motion to deny the NEA-NK grievance related to physical education.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. So motion, Mr. Jones, second from Ms. Hoskins. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion to deny the grievance passes unanimously. We've already done item K. And then, so we've reached 2018-19 school budget. Mrs. King?
So, back in February of 2019, the town asked the school department if we were interested in doing our own. The official terminology is GASB 75 valuation, and basically what it is for other post-employment benefits. Generally, towns have large other post-employment benefits because of police and fire and the way their contracts work. In Rhode Island, for us, generally, because we pay our pension as we go along, we're required to by the state of Rhode Island, so any of our pension fees are paid as we go along. We generally do not have as large post-employment benefits. This district is even better than some districts because we also have never offered lifetime medical to retiring employees. There are some districts out there that have or do offer that, so that would increase other post-employment benefits. So in August, I came to the school committee with the results of an RFP that I had of us breaking away and doing our own GASB 75 audit. So generally what happens is 1 year, and for us this was FY19, it is a full audit. The second year it's just merely an update for the audit. So the reason why we really jumped on the chance to take care of this on our own and to break out and do our own audit is because the numbers never made sense to many of us for the time that I've been here. And basically because we know that the school department pays their pension as they go along, and there are not rich retirement benefits that are offered to any of our employees. No lifetime medical, no long-term other benefits. So we were never really fully involved with the audit with the town. As a matter of fact, the last time that there was just an update of the OPEB audit, we don't even have a record of being asked to give updated information. So it was very important that we took control of our own destiny here, and we did move forward and did our own OPEB audit. And what we had suspected for many years is actually very accurate. So the OPEB liability that is truly supposed to be reported is about a third of what has been reported over the last, I can't even tell you how many years. So that's the results of this audit that are in front of you. We will continue to do our own until we don't. So it was very well worth our time and effort to do that, so that we take control of it. The data we're in control of, we can explain to the auditors that do this kind of audit exactly how our operation functions. As a matter of fact, with this group, we actually told them to go back and take another look because we still didn't believe that the numbers were correct that they were reporting. And they did. And we had conference calls with them, and they realized that the numbers have not been properly reported because the assumptions they have been using were not fully vetted on the school department side.
And so just to make it clear, so the difference in the discrepancy is not because of anything in the school department side, it's more of just a difference in the town was using outdated information
Yeah,
compared to what
and
we
there was
have
not
here.
a real deep dive on the school side because the town was in control of the audit. So when we explained to the auditors exactly how our post-employment benefits work, we gave them some history on who actually even takes, even uses what post-employment benefits we do have. They were able to dramatically change their assumptions based on true, accurate information from the school department.
So that's just you reporting
That's
this. Any
it,
questions
yeah,
regarding that?
That's just a report.
Do we have to have this or would we have this every year?
You will.
Okay.
So this was a full audit for FY19. So for FY20, it's just going to be an update, but you will still have the same report in front of you.
Yeah, I just want to say I appreciate the administration doing this. Just to put it in context, I know this can kind of is underplaying the point. If you think about what happened in Warwick and other communities, a lot of this is because they have millions of dollars in OPEB liabilities hanging out there that are just growing.
Unfunded.
That's the key point. Unfunded liabilities, which are bills that one day will come due over time. So the fact that ours is so minimal, and this is not just a union issue. We should make it clear. Our administrators don't get any post-employment benefits either, in the larger sense, where these costs come. Well, just don't want to, it's not, right? It's across the board. I think really speaks to, good decisions and good agreements that prior, current and prior, but our predecessors and the administration and prior administrations made. Because that's a huge bill. I just looked at a couple other surrounding communities, and it's in the millions of dollars. So the fact that we sort of ran with this now to get clarification that ours is so much smaller than what had been reported, I think is good, not only for accuracy, but, is a real financial stewardship point that prior committees and the administration has done over time. So I just think you're underplaying the point of this, but thank you for, Superintendent and Ms. King for taking this on and getting it done. So I think it's a valuable contribution to our financial health.
Okay, next, 2019-20 school budget and CIP bond and existing bond and future bond. So.
Yes, so every year around this time, we submit, and I'm going to explain this because every single year for the last several years, it has been confused. So the school department has a general operating budget and we have a capital request budget, okay? And they're both separate for the school department because we are maxed out of our ask for the general operating budget. We're only allowed to ask for 4% over the prior year. So that is only general operating. It's not any capital items. It's not replacing boilers. It's not replacing roofs. It's more of your maintenance on those kind of things. And they have to be separate because if we asked for any amount of money for a capital budget, we would blow that 4% away. Okay. So that point seems to be lost every year when we do the budget, and I guess I'm really not sure how to present that to the town council so that it's understood. We had one year where I guess they thought that was included in our number and it wasn't, and then another year where it was. It was just it's something we definitely have to work on to try to explain again. We've been doing this for 7 years, but every year we need to explain this capital piece again. So this is really the first part of the FY21 budget packages, okay? This is one package where we request, we present our I'm seeing double here. Where we present to the Asset Management Committee and the Town Council what our capital budget looks like for the future, for 5 years out. And the last couple of years, we've actually had a specific request for funding for that particular school year. So for FY21, so what you have here is several different pieces. The top sheet is really a summary that shows you the projected out of our FY18 $13.5 million bond that we received from citizens. Some plans on capital reserve spending, which is basically comes funded from our fund balance. A request to the town council for capital funding, and then way future capital projects, which are probably a bond or TBD. So this report basically is really just a repeat of the prior year. One, because our funding of $13.5 million doesn't really fill the whole gap of the more than $70 million we're looking at needing in the next 5 to 10 years. And also because when we got the FY18 bond, we were only able to start do a couple of projects. So there's not a lot that's been done. So basically we're just kind of moving the needle, I hate to say, but it's important that we understand that the capital needs in the district are big. I believe the capital needs in the town are big. I do not at all think the town does not have capital needs. I do. But what I do know is that there isn't anybody working on trying to have a long-term plan for this. The Asset Management Committee, I can tell you, last year was the first year that they ever recommended that the school department be funded in their capital budget, and we didn't get any. So it was a little ironic. But there really, really needs to be this long-term vision on how we reduce this backlog of capital needs in the town-wide. And I just don't see that happen. I have never seen that happening in the 7 years that I've been here. And I always say this every year, buildings don't get any younger. So what is 10 million today is going to be 12 million and 15 million and 20 million, or irreparable, like some people believe some of our assets are. So it's kind of a soapbox issue for Dr. Ajay and I. We've been kind of beating our heads against the wall on this for a long time. We are very, very grateful for the $13.5 million that we received, but it is just the tip of the iceberg. And I really wish that there were a group out there trying to figure out how we could do this together and we could start saving for the future while trying to reduce the backlog. We have roofs that are going to need to be replaced. We have roofs that need to be replaced now. We have done a lot with our fund balance. The school committee has done a great job with making sure that fund balance is put toward those kind of items, but it's not a consistent funding source. We don't know what our surplus is going to be every year that gets dropped into fund balance. Some years it's better than others. Some years we have to spend it on things that we wish we didn't have to, like the issue that we had at Quinnesset Elementary School last summer. So what's important that you guys focus on tonight is not only the entire CIP, but also the town council capital funding line item and what you want that to be. So right now, I have recommended a request for $650,000, which is similar to the request from last year. And what that would cover is a reserve for the athletic complex of $150,000, $75,000 for bus fleet upgrades, because that's another thing people don't understand, part of your capital. It's not just your building, it's your big purchases that you need to make, and buses are big purchases. Security upgrades of $150,000. Playground upgrades, $50,000, and technology upgrades and refresh of $225,000. And that would be, your smart boards, your projectors, some of the computers. Even though we have a lot of Chromebooks, we do still have computers in the schools. So capital encompasses facilities and those kind of items as well.
Thank you, Mrs. King. And I just want to make a couple points too. When you say we kind of beating our heads against the wall and beating the drum over and over and over and again, I've given this speech many, many times before, but I'm going to do it again. Although my son would point out that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. We'll try anyway. Every year, we ask the town council to contribute to our capital reserve line. And as Mrs. King has said, there's been a lot of confusion over that, how that works. The reason it is broken out separately was explained, and it has always been done that way. You can look back through, at least, I think I've looked at over the years, 15 years worth of town budgets. There's always a separate line for the town council to set aside fund for school committee capital improvements. Years ago, that was a consistent number. Then a tough budget year got hit. It looked like low-hanging fruit, so the town council cut that number down to zero. Also level funded the school budget for a number of years. And that number never really came back. And every year at this time of year, the school committee votes on how much we're going to ask for. It's submitted to the Asset Management Committee, I forget what their AMC stands for exactly. They get it. It is submitted to the town council as part of our budget. We ask for a certain amount. We explain what we would use those funds for. In 2019, fiscal year 2019, this is fiscal year 2020, the town did approve $500,000. But even at the time, and even since, I've heard commentary that the town council voted to give $500,000 to the school department that they never even asked for. And I've heard that over and over again. That's not true. It was in the original budget request. It was submitted to the Asset Management Council. It was there. It's always been there. It was not just money that the town council decided to, appropriate for no reason. It was used for specific projects. And that year I was very pleased because I get up every year and I say, what the school department needs is a consistent funding source for capital projects. Things need to be fixed. And what happens when you do not budget, and it's not just budget, you need to fund capital projects that you know you're going to need, you're simply kicking the can down the road. And the only way to do it then is to do a bond. And a bond has costs and interest, and it is not the right way to do it. You know you're going to need it. You need to set the money aside, just like every one of us knows that things are going to break in our home, our roof is going to need to be replaced. You need to make allowances for these types of things so that you're not caught short when you need to do it. It is my hope that the town will hear this request and see it for what it is. I also want to point out that we did increase the request from prior years, and one of the items that we added was the fact that we just spent, what's the cost of the athletic field? I don't have it off the top of my head.
2.6 right now.
$2.6 million on our athletic field. The synthetic turf has a finite life. It does not last forever. We know that. So we asked for additional funding specifically to state that we want to put aside money so that when that turf needs to be replaced, we are not standing there looking at a ragged athletic field and no money to pay for it. Last year the town gave us $0. None. I even asked for a little leeway, and thankfully by the town council president was personally given some leeway to come back to the microphone after they voted down $0 and tried to make the case again that we just spent all of this money to put in this field and we are not going to have the funds to replace it when we know it needs to be done. The town council did not revisit their vote, and we still have 0. I'm just making the case again. I think the turf is just an example of the problem. I think it's a very easy example for the public to understand. Roofs are abstract, buses are abstract. We just spent all this money on something, and we're still not able, even right away, to start planning appropriately for its replacement. And it's a symptom throughout our town. There's a lot of discussion in town on our ballot referendum that's coming up with our town hall. Just another example of how the town as a whole doesn't always manage its capital assets appropriately. As the chairman of the school committee and as a member of the school committee, I think it's our responsibility to manage the assets that we have direct control over appropriately, which are our schools and our school facilities. But we can't raise funds. We can only ask for them. And if they're not given to us, then there's nothing more that we can do about it. And that's unfortunately the situation we've been placed in. And I'm hoping that this year maybe we have a different result. That is my soapbox.
Or charge user fees.
And that results in us having, if we aren't given funding from the town, we need to find alternate sources of funding. And that's where the user fees come in.
Is the 650,000, is there a cap on that, on how much we can ask for? There's no cap on that. There's
And-
the 4%
and we
on
have
the regular
tried-
budget, but
4%
there's
is on the
nothing on
general
cap.
operating budget.
And we have had all different ways of trying to go about this.
Yeah.
Okay? One year we said, all right, do you want to know what it really would be? And I don't remember the number,
$4
but
million.
we said, you know what?
Yeah.
It's $4 million. And that is a number that is actually relatively accurate, but we didn't get funding. So we said, well, let's be more specific. We asked for 500,000. We said, this is what we're going to do. We'll use it for technology. We'll use it to replace a couple buses because our buses are on a cycle. Buses don't last forever. You replace, if you don't want to buy them all in one year, you replace the oldest one and cycle through. And we were given the money, and we used it the way that we said we were going to use it. But then this year, it's not there. And what we need is, like I said, it's a reliable source of funding in order to plan for these things.
Could they look at this and say, well, we'll support this item and this item, but not
They
these
can-
kind of things?
This
So
they
they
can-
they don't have to approve it in a lump, they can.
Well,
They can say
Bits and
dollar
pieces.
amount, but they can't tell us what to do with it.
Oh, okay, that was my next question. Huh, okay,
But I would argue it's kind of a good faith point.
right.
I mean, budgets are priorities, so if the town council, for example, said it's this number because we want to fund this,
Yep.
Granted, we could change our mind, but I think part of this is an exercise in faith because, for example, we're asking for $150,000 for the athletic complex. Yes, some of that we might need because we're going to need lights and we'd like to put some of that sooner. But ultimately, we and future committees would be responsible to preserve that. So 10 years from now, there's $1.something million to replace the turf field. And people aren't going, where's our turf field, right? With this whole discussion of the track. How did we let the track, get to where it was, to where it's unusable for years, right? That's the whole point of going, we don't want to wait till we have to replace a $500,000 track. We want $50,000, right, every year. Same with the bus fleet. If you replace one every year, your life cycle has a constant fleet age. If you wait 5 years, then you got to replace 3 buses, right? I mean, it's kind of the whole point. So one playground a year, right? So we're not asking PTOs to raise inordinate amounts of money, which is kind of where we go to on this. So I think the specificity helps the town council maybe think about priorities too. But, all of this is designed to keep what we have in a constant state of excellence. And again, I think budgets reflect priority, and if you want excellence, you should budget for that.
So what's the next step with this? What's the process that?
I would just need you to approve this submittal, and what happens from then is the Asset Management Committee schedules a meeting to review the school department submittal, and Jim Grundy, who is the chair of our building committee, he attends those meetings for us now as our representative. And they will come back with recommendations. Their recommendations usually go to the town council about January or so. Because this number, they're not going to vote on yes or no, or any number until May. It comes at the same time as the general operating budget does. But, you know, I think people really are kind of flabbergasted at how much things cost, and they do, they cost a lot. I mean, we really need to repave our junior lot and that, you know, area in the D building where people park. It's $250,000, you know. So we're not talking money here that, you know, is 10 here and 10 there and 20 here and 20 there. Not at all. We're talking significant amounts of money. And $13.5 million, great. We were so happy to have that. It's not going to go as far as you would hope $13 million would go. It just doesn't. Things are very expensive.
And I just want to make one other point. I don't want the fact that the town council did support the budget that we requested for our operating budget last year to get lost in the conversation, because they did. And that is very much appreciated. But I mean, the point is that they're two different budgets and they deal with two different things. And it's one thing to keep the day-to-day operations running, but that's only one component of what needs to happen. And maintaining the facilities is the other, because you can't run a school department without schools. Anything else?
And related to that, I think one thing that's missing from this, that we've had conversations, is our media centers and our auditorium. And I know, for example, and we have talked about, right, even our own groups that charge for events, we're gonna take some overhead from that to help replace it, but that's not gonna replace the stage. And that's not gonna replace the seats, and that's not gonna replace the carpeting in the auditorium.
You're talking about the high school.
Yes. But our media centers are across, right, our libraries, media centers, but I do think, and maybe, you know, Joe can keep this too, you know, our high school media center needs to reflect more our point of a 21st century education. And the superintendent then talked too, but I think we need to start adding funds to upgrade that as well. And so I would make a motion to amend the CIP request to add $50,000 for the auditorium and the media center in the district.
So the request to the town council for the town council piece would be $700,000 in this scenario.
So you made a motion to, why don't we do this, before we second it, why don't you make your motion that we approve this with the change
With
to
an
up it to
additional $50,000,
$700,000 for the total $700,000?
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
You're not
I will
saying.
make a new motion to approve the FY
One second.
21 NKSD Capital Improvement Program amended with an additional $50,000 request for the auditorium and school meeting centers.
Now we have a motion. So I would need a second for the motion, then we can have discussion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. So motion, Mr. Jones, second, Ms. Hoskins. Discussion, I heard. Yes, Mr. Mallon.
Can you elaborate on what the technology upgrades
Yes.
include?
We need smart boards pretty much across the district. I mean, many of them are old vintage from 2010, 2012. They're, you know, $4,000 or $5,000 a piece. We have, Mr. Waterman is going to be presenting to the school committee in November or December what the technology plan is. And he does have that 5-year vision, and it's everything that needs to be refreshed. So we have Chromebooks that we have operationalized. We do have the lease on those Chromebooks as part of our operating budget. But this other number also includes things like there are desktops that need to be refreshed in the district. So basically, pretty much any of the
access
technologies. Yeah, the access points for
Having
our
a
Wi-Fi,
network card.
exactly. So any of our other technology needs besides the Chromebook rentals.
I mean, what inevitably happens with technology is that as you improve technology, the technology gets used more, which like, so bandwidth. So Mr. Waterman would explain to you that, you know, when you increase the bandwidth, that means that more people use it for new and exciting things, which eats up your bandwidth, and you need more bandwidth. It never, that's what technology does. And so the, for example, just particular item, the access points that we have now are not going to be the appropriate access points 5-6 years from now. Technology advances and yeah.
And also another big item are career tech programs. So several years ago, in order for the finance academy to get off the ground, we were lucky enough to get a $250,000 grant from RIDE, of which we matched, I think, $60-some thousand. Well, we're coming up on 5 years on that. It's a lot. That's a lot of money. So it's all of those programs. Our communications department at the high school. A lot of our elementary schools, the Elmos, you talk about the Elmos and the readers and all of that stuff is part of this phased-in plan.
I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
it didn't have Media Lab rolled into that.
No.
No.
Okay, so it's completely separate.
To
And
follow
Dr.
up
O'Shea,
on
sorry.
Mr. Jones' comment about the library and the media center, the auditorium piece, similar to the point made about the track and field. That is an area that gets a lot of use, not just from the school, but from the whole community. And inevitably, things, there's wear and tear, the carpeting, the stage, the technology. So that's something where we need to be mindful of having a fund to take care of upgrades when we need them. But the library, that's an item Dr. Morris, Dr. Mansiri, and I have been talking about for some time now. I know Mr. Jones is Mr. Blasberg, I talked with them tonight, and they see, we all see, that library has served us well, and it's time for a refresh there as well. For instance, we have a lot of tabletop computers where everyone in the school has already got a Chromebook going on. And the meeting spaces are kind of tired, and I think the ability to use some more modular, flexible type of furniture to create different kinds of meeting spaces, use different types of technology for making presentations and that sort of thing. I think that would really bring that more up to date and provide for a wider variety of uses than we're getting from it right now. So that's something that we'd like to use some of this capital funding to help us take care of.
Has the auditorium discussion been ongoing? Is it something that needs to be done in the next few years? I would say that because $50,000 doesn't seem
Yeah,
like a lot.
I see it as kind of a savings account that would build. We have made some significant upgrades, particularly with technology at the auditorium in the last few years.
And we do have some money in the bond, so further out in the bond, we really need the floor covering to be replaced. We have done, the school committee has approved some repairs to the seating and all that. We really need to update that as well, but there are some funds in there for that as well. And the air conditioning in there, we replaced probably the rooftop unit over the auditorium maybe 4 years ago, so that's in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I don't know this for certain, but it would not surprise me if, give a few more years before we're going to have to talk about that stage.
Yeah,
It's got a lot of wear
he's
and
right,
tear.
he's
Yeah.
right.
Right, so it'd be better to have some money set aside over
Absolutely.
the next
Yeah.
4 years,
Yeah.
then 4 years from now, ask for $300,000.
And, keep in mind that it's not that we have not been able to do capital improvements over the years. We've been lucky enough due to, in any budget year, you can look at any number of different line items that did result in a surplus at the end of the year. When that happens, that is rolled into our fund balance, and it is used for capital improvements and things like that. We have a very strict policy, and we hold to it, that we don't do what's called a structural deficit, which is we don't use those funds to plug operational money, because then the next year that money's not there anymore, and you've created a hole for yourself. But those surpluses are not guaranteed. They're not a reliable source of funding. Sometimes we have more, sometimes we have less. And there could always be a year where things are much tighter than we expect and there's virtually nothing. It's not an actual funding source. It's just when that money is there, it's used appropriately. And it does result in less funding that we need to ask for the town. But it doesn't change the fact that these things do need to be replaced, and there needs to be a reliable source of funding for it, which we do not have now.
And we have a 5-year asset protection plan that we're required to have by RIDE. Ours was approved in May of 2018. And that outlook for 5 to 10 years district-wide was $70 million for capital needs. And like I said, that number's not gonna go down. We have a few $100,000 at any given time in a surplus. It doesn't even touch that, so that becomes very reactionary instead of proactive and trying to work with the town. Like I said, I know the town has the same issues. There needs to be some people working on this and figuring out the long term on how this is gonna work for the town of North Kingstown.
So, we had a motion and a second. We had a second, right, Ms. Seeley? I just want to make sure I wrote motion, I
Second.
forgot to write second.
Yes.
You can't second. Any further discussion?
So the
Try it.
50 is for the media center in the high school
And
and
auditorium.
auditorium?
Yes.
Both.
Well, so what happens is, later on this year, when we talk about our budget status, we'll take a look at our fund balance. So in the past, like, we reserved certain amounts for athletics, we reserve it. Obviously, the committee has the right to reallocate it, but it's, like I said, a good faith point to tell everyone, these are our capital priorities, and here's where we put funding. So, you know, my point would be is if the town council gave us this money, we would put some into athletic bucket, we would put into these buckets, right? And then, you know, future committees hopefully would honor that by saving the money and then spending it on those bucketed areas. So it's probably, as I said, it's probably not enough, but again, we're not identifying exact needs now, but we're starting to save for that in some cases. In some cases, we should refresh a playground if the town council funds it. We will buy a bus if they fund it.
And this goes to asset management, they look it over,
And
they
they
give it back
give
to us.
They give a report to the town,
Before.
which includes the town review of capital, all of the town departments.
And that goes with the rest of our budget.
Right, so when you
requests that we
see,
haven't
and
gotten to
Mr.
yet.
Mather hasn't seen it yet, but so
Yeah.
when we get there in January,
March.
February, March, when you see that big budget packet, one of the pages in the middle is going to look like this, okay? And the point of the allocations where we say, oh, if you give us $700,000, we will do A, B, and C, is just to make that number less abstract. You know, we want the public and the town to understand, you know, we're asking for funds. If we are given those funds, this is what we anticipate spending them on, and this is what we can do with that amount. And historically, that is what we have used the funds for in the year that we got it. So that's the idea. So if there's no further discussion, we had a motion and a second. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And with that, we have reached the end of our agenda, and I ask for a motion to adjourn. A motion?
Second.
And a second. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.